Do you have any plans on being out there in LA for the celebration?
For the first time in history, finally, Chris, the head of Lucasfilm, has said they're inviting me to go and to do panels.
Now this is Podgate.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Podgazer podcast. I'm your host, Star Wars Gazer. I am joined today by Django Fett over here. You may know him as Anakin Skywalker. Well, kind of, sort of. And then joining us today, we have legendary man here, Mr. Roger Christian. How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, it is so good to have you again. It's been a while since we've talked. I know you've been really busy.
Yes.
You have the Maker podcast now that you've been doing. I've been watching all those. Those are a lot of fun. So really good pleasure to have you here. Just want to get you started off on a couple questions here. We'll kind of get the ice broken and then we'll kind of move on from there. I had a question that kind of came up when you were on your Maker podcast. You guys were talking about your favorite planets in Star Wars. I have a question. If you had to get stuck on one Star Wars planet for the rest of eternity, what would it be and why?
I think probably Tatooine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I loved working anytime, both in Tunisia and I love Morocco. It's like my second home. So it's very like that.
Okay.
Desert and the food, everything about it is pretty... I don't know. There's an organic kind of natural. I don't know. It's mystical. Actually, I think that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think some of it, the mysticalness of it, do you think some of it's due to like having done Star Wars and stuff over there? There's kind of like a nostalgia thing for you, or do you think is there nothing like that?
That adds to it, of course. I mean, there's no question. There's very fond memories of it. But I used to go when I was much younger, and I was working when I first started, and I was set decorating Randon Hopkirk. The pressure was exhausting on us, getting every turnaround and the amount we had to get into each one. And they used to leapfrog me. So I had a few days off and I used to race down, get a flight to Gibraltar, go across to Tangier and go and stay there and go out into the desert and do stuff. And I always found it kind of invigorating. So I think it comes from there. But now you can't separate Tunisia from Star Wars. It's now become, they could rename the whole Tunisia now to Tatooine.
Right. They should, yeah. Forget Tunisia. It's Tatooine.
Yeah.
100%. I love it. Django, you had a question about his favorite, I think the favorite movie to direct, right?
Yeah. I was wondering, what was your personal favorite? What is your personal favorite movie, Star Wars in general? But like, what was also your favorite movie or favorite part of any movie you've directed?
Well, it's. I mean, the favorite. It's the original Star Wars had. It was, we've talked about it enough, and George does now. How grim it was and how hard it was to make. Phantom Menace was just a joy to direct. I had such a great time on that, and it was a different attitude, nobody questioned George then. Yeah. They thought, oh, this guy knows what he's doing.
Right.
And we were back in the desert, and, I was shooting some of the Darth Maul fights there, which were really memorable for me. To get into that, that's certainly one of the favorites. And the other was I had to do a 8-minute take on Nostradamus with F. Murray Abraham playing one of the lead character with Checky Cario, and I had a set built that I could get the camera in, and we could never quite get rid of the sound of the Aeroflex, and I didn't really want to I wasn't sure how it would go, so I let them go, the actors. I'd rehearse them. They knew what they were doing, and I filmed it in one take.
Wow.
And I was just mesmerized. I remember I took F. Mary Abraham back when we were doing the sound. You do the sound replacement ADR, because we had this very faint noise of the camera. And I had him in the studios in Pinewood, and he was staring at the screen, and I said, just have a look at this and see if you think you could even do it. And I could see his shoulders like tense, and he was watching the whole 8 minutes, and he just stood there in silence. Then he turned to me and said, my dear boy, I don't think I could ever do that again. Don't worry about it. I put a bit of wind noise on it, and I got rid of it because the performance was more important than a bit of noise on the track.
100%.
That was one of my favorite moments. I was like, those things happen sometimes. You look for magic, and it was there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how, like, I feel like that's part of the reason, like, I don't know, there's got to be a feeling when you get a moment like that behind the scenes when you're putting it together where it just feels magical, where you're like, this is going to be good. Like, I just got a feeling this is going to be good.
Well, we chase those moments every day when we're shooting. We chase those moments. That's the that's when you finally reach that pinnacle of, here it is. That's the moment.
That's so beautiful. That is so good. I know a little bit too. We've rehashed this, but Django, he and I were talking last night, and he doesn't necessarily know necessarily your whole history and some of the things that you've designed for Star Wars. So just, you don't have to go like into super detail like we've done before, but just kind of like, if you want a brief overview, just kind of like what got you into movie making, and then some of the things that you've made for Star Wars, besides obviously the lightsaber, the greatest weapon of all time. But
well, in those days, the set decorator handled everything that, like, the designer would design a bare set. Anything that went into a set, I had to bring. Weapons, any prop that was used anywhere in the film, the set decorator had to do. We even were a lot involved in vehicles. We had to provide and bring those. We had a massive load in the old days. Now it's all split up. You have one person doing one type of weapon and another doing the other. I had to do it all, and I was alone. There was no help. I could have a designated prop man with me, a painter and a carpenter, and you just had to find it. So I had to, everything that you see in Star Wars, everything that went into Tatooine, I had to bring and get it.
Wow.
And the difference was there was no reference whatsoever. There was never been done before.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was Flash Gordon type movies which were over designed and bad, you know, costumes, and nothing ever worked. So it was my ambition that matched George's, that I wanted to make it look like it was a used world. I didn't want the audience to ever question this was not real. And that meant making it old and dented and used, and, you know, and even the new stuff, we still gave that kind of persona to it, to change it. So it was pretty daunting in the short time that I had. And because there was such a lack of funding and lack of time, once Fox finally agreed to give us the money, there was only 2.5 months before we were shooting, which was normally would have been a year. So I couldn't design anything. I basically had to find anything I could find and make it work and adapt it. So I just used my kind of instinct. And I think that part of where it came from was my first job ever was by destiny, if you like. Dr. Zhivago was a film. This is David Lean, and it contained everything, the history of the takeover of communism in Russia. Massive, gigantic movie. And by chance, my first interview for a job was with John Box, the designer of that.
Wow.
And he took me on as tea boy to make the tea and the big art departments, and I had to make a lot of tea. But everything I've ever learned came from John Box, and the film was Oliver. It was a musical Oliver, and we had to create London, 1800s Dickensian type of London, and the canals, everything in that was inspired me for the rest of my career. And John saw something in me. I didn't stay making the tea. After a few months, I got on and I designed and had to draw up one of the canals and things. But I realized afterwards, and I was talking about this, I made my first prop. And John one day gave me a box. Fagin is the famous character from Oliver. And he used to count his money. So they did a huge musical number where he had a lid of the old trunk that he put open, and he was counting and doing money on it and stuff. They gave me this pine box that was all brand new and said, why don't you make that look like better for the screen? And I spent a week, I think, burning it with blowtorches and getting dyes and shoe polish. And I wanted it to look like a very old, real box. And so there it was. And I guess that's where it all started, actually.
Wow.
That's cool. That is so cool.
So I guess in taking all of what you just said there, I'm curious, with everything that you've done, what is, I just want to get right into it. What is an achievement of yours that you're most proud of, I would say?
Well, the lightsaber has to be number one.
Yeah.
Even though what it is, but it's something that everybody in the world wants. It doesn't matter what gender you are, or male, female, young, old, everyone wants a lightsaber. And
100%.
I recognized when I read this weapon that George had written called a laser sword, that if Star Wars would work, it would become the representative kind of iconic image of it. But I do think the second thing I would say is the bridge on the Nostromo in Alien.
Okay.
Which I remember, I hadn't remembered saying it, but when there's a book on the making of Alien comes out, and there's quotes from me, and one of the headline quotes is, "This was a monster of organization, and it was massive, and I wanted that to look like the most real space truck ever seen, and it was a monster to put together." And I wanted things like I'd never seen before, where Ripley's flipped a switch, a light would react. So we wired everything up like that. I think the look of that is outstanding. I think, wow, I got that one right.
That's cool. That's so cool.
And if you want a Star Wars one, it's no question the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Django, we were talking so you helped with R2D2, right? There's the R2D2 side of things, the Millennium Falcon. There's a lot of things in Star Wars besides just the lightsaber that some people might not know that you had a massive hand in, Roger.
Yes. The first thing we ever did, because there was no money, and George came over, and we had 4 months before Fox gave us the money, we realized that if we couldn't make R2D2 work, there was no movie. And there was only Les and I and John Barry, the designer. And John Barry said, "You got to get this to work." So we had the idea to build one round a small person. We got Kenny Baker, who was 3'8", so we could make it 4 feet. And there was no money, nothing. So I got a friend of mine, Bill Harmon, was the carpenter who worked for Monty Python on their films, who had to do things with just ridiculously small amounts of budget. And Bill had wood at home, so he brought in the marine ply from his garage, and we had a kettle and we steamed it and made that round cylinder that could go round him. He said, I can't make the top. And we were in Lee Studios, which was a lighting company, and they had a scrapyard where they threw everything out. And I went and dug around in there and found the top, stuck that on. I've stuck the lights on that were from a Dakota, bits and pieces to make it look better to show George. So, yeah, R2-D2, I carved the little hand. He has two little arms on the front that do that. I carved those myself with a penknife and stuck them on. So we developed R2-D2 to work. But I mean, even C-3PO, no one knew how to do the eyes. Ralph had shown glowing eyes. And one morning over very early morning tea, where we met in my office, I suggested that we could do it like those police observation rooms where the witness can safely watch 5 criminals through a one-way mirror. And I said, why don't, if I did that? And they said, oh, great, you do that. So I had to make his eyes. And I did that. But then I realized Christmas lights got hot, everything. There was no little lights. And by sheer chance, I saw a documentary, the first camera ever they put down inside a human being. And I got my buyer and I said, you've got to find these. These cannot get hot. He searched and searched and found them from a hospital supplier. And so I was able to put those in there. And then somehow we had to bury a battery inside his costume, which was not easy. But, you know, almost everything in Star Wars, because there was only John Barry who designed the sets and took George to Tatooine, and there was only me as the creative having to bring everything else. You know, I didn't have a team. There were no other creatives. So anything that you see in Star Wars, I had to somehow use an instinct to make it look right. And that was based on George's vision of a spaghetti Western in space. And I happened to love Sergio Leone, so I knew what he was talking about. It was, you know, George never told me. He never came to the room and said, can you make me this? Can you do that? I had to use my own inspiration and find things and just present it to George. And he never turned anything down that I did. You know, that's how the Millennium Falcon, John could build the set. I didn't have the money to build all of the interior of it. So that's when I thought, well, I'll get scrapped airplane junk, and no one wanted it, and it was incredibly cheap. So I was able to buy truckloads of it and build the sets out of it. Was so I had a hand in every single thing, really.
And I know you've talked about that before, like you and George having the same vision as far as movie goes, and just kind of being like a match made in heaven, right? And so when you talk a lot about reading the script and basically kind of putting your own hand on everything. Like you said, George isn't coming to you, can you do this, can you do that? You're reading the script going, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, and I need this. And just because of the way you guys thought so much alike, it was a great match for this movie.
Yes, it's destiny, I think. You know how, because there were hardly anybody, nobody else could do it. None of the other art departments were willing to. They had a structure, and you went on the drawing board and you drew it up. You make a design on the drawing board, make it up, and it goes through the workshops and it comes out the other end. We didn't have that luxury. I had to find, objects, but it's like, when you think about the first lightsaber, I was desperately searching for something that would justify the mystical weapon of a Jedi that looked right. And when I found that box of 3 Graflex handles, I wasn't saying, oh, these are battery packs that go on a press camera. I saw a lightsaber. It just, there it was. It had a button. So I think all the training I'd gone through and working, I was always pretty independent in the film industry. I got started very young. I was set decorating very young, and I was working for very interesting designers. I think all of that and it enabled me to do it, because you know, if you have a structure that is how it's specifically done as a kind of history, I could never have done it. No one else would have done. So destiny kind of struck, that we had the same vision. And I happen to love Kurosawa, and I happen to love Sergio Leone. You know, Sergio Leone made his westerns in Spain for under $1 million, and he made some of the best westerns in the history of cinema, to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing.
And I think, it's something, you know, with my book, Cinema Alchemist, because I was forced to write, because if I don't put all this down, and it's why I'm doing these Patreon and all these other masterclasses, is because it's gone, it's lost. It'll never be, there's no one else knows how we did it. And when they republished the book earlier this year, and George is out of Star Wars, as you know, and they asked me if I could get someone. They knew George wouldn't do it, and they asked me if Guillermo might do it, and he said yes, of course, but he was filming. I thought then, you know what? I've never asked George for anything, so I asked him, and he wrote a very, very kind, very touching forward for me in the book, and he does say that he still remembers the day I turned up with a piece of a camera part and said I found the lightsaber.
That is so cool. That is,
so I think having spent 4 months together in a tiny studio in London, and I liked him. I really liked THX. You know, I like what he did with that movie, and I think I always say that, you know, when I'm directing a film, I have to get the crew into the same, what I call, we're all playing one violin. We have to play the same violin. It's very difficult if your DP isn't online with you, your art director, anything, and sometimes it can be a fight getting what you want. Yeah. So it was a symbiosity, if you like, that happened by magic. So that's the force.
Yeah. It's cool that you mentioned like writing these things down, because I was telling Django last night, we were chatting and we were kind of going back over Rebel Scum Con, and I was like, I've forgotten that was the first time you and Lauren Peterson had ever met. Lauren Peters. Like, I was like, they got a table right next to each other, and that was the first time they had ever met in person. I'm like, that is wild, but I'm glad you guys are getting out here to tell these stories and tell about how it was done.
Yeah, I just got back yesterday from Atlanta, and I was at a Rogue Fun event, and Nick Maley, who's Yoda, he's Yoda. He and I hadn't met since 49 years, since we were both in our own independent things. So we've recorded lots of stuff together. Because it's important, you know, and he's like me, he's got a very good memory, and he's still, you know, charging on, doing stuff. But Yoda came out of his, and it's still, you know, it's how really, because kids now see massive Hollywood movies and stuff, but this was you know, we made this thing with no money and no time and very little support. And I think that's the mentorship that I try to impart to everybody. Luke Skywalker is everyone. It's the journey that we all take. It's the hero's journey. That's the journey of everybody. So I do this not to be egotistical about, wow, look what I did. I do it to show that it's true that if you find a passion and you don't give up and you keep going, you can find a way.
That's so cool.
We just happened to be lucky that it was a movie called Star Wars that really pulled it into another realm.
Right, 100%. Yeah, I was asking one of my coworkers the other day. He's getting set to retire in about a year, and he was 12 or 13. He said when Star Wars came out. And I was like, what was it like around that time? Because like obviously you guys grew up with like a certain type of movie, and then to see this Star Wars, and he goes, it was a different time. He's like, it was like about 2 years every time you went to the theater, coming soon to theaters, and you just see the Death Star blow up. And that was like the thing. You're like, when is this stinking movie coming out? You know, like, and he said it was kind of wild. Like it just became from nowhere. It just became this massive thing that nobody really saw coming.
Yes. Yeah, no, I interviewed with the documentary Galaxy Built on Hope that I've made, and I'll try to get out whenever I can. Guillermo del Toro asked to be in it, and I talked with him, and he says he was a very young lad, went to a cinema, didn't know what to expect, was so blown away. He went round 4 times and saw it again and again, and that's where his career came from. In fact, James Cameron says the same. He went to see this movie and said, that's it, that's what I got to do now.
That's so cool. An inspiration for millions, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I know that whenever George was trying to figure out how to make merchandise and things for it, he was going to toy companies and nobody would take him except Kenner picked him up. But I knew no one wanted to give him a chance. At least that's what I've heard. So I don't know. I guess I'm curious. How did you feel about it? Were you also thinking that it wasn't going to be really that big of a success, or were you putting everything into it, everything you had into it, just hoping that it would, come out on top regardless?
Well, George says it himself, and you can see there's a Christopher Nolan interview. The two of them are talking about filmmaking, and he stops one point and he says, Christopher, there were only 5 people stuck by my side on Star Wars to get it made, and I was one of those. So because I loved mythology, and I liked, I grew up, I was in King Arthur when I was growing up, and I knew Excalibur was that. And I was very different to everybody else on the crew because I did know all of that, and I knew that legend was very important, and I thought, wow, he's created a legend here. So I put everything into it. I knew it would be successful. I just knew this was different, and it was something I'd wanted to see all my life. None of us could imagine that it went this big. That for sure. But I thought it was going to be a very important movie when it came out because it was a science fiction that I wanted to see, and I thought the world wanted to see. And I was reading science fiction. I was never seeing that on screen.
Yeah. That's cool.
So, that the whole business with the toys, I mean, they all turned it down. Charlie Lippincott has a huge place in the history of Star Wars, and he pounded on the doors. Everyone turned it down, and he managed to get Kenner to take it. It's changed the whole entire world, really. Not just the food, but the collecting. And in Atlanta, there were 200 collectors. It was a collectors meeting, and I'm seeing rooms full of incredible collections of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
And people are going out and making their own lightsabers, and they were going and finding what I made and everything. So people are discovering talents they never knew they had, which to me is what this is all about.
Yeah. Go out, use your imagination, create.
Yes.
100%.
And that's taught out of you from school, from peers, from parents. They get rid of that fast as they can, and most people go along with that. You don't even have a choice. So I just hope I can inspire people to find out who they really are. Actually,
that's really cool. I love it. One of the things that you talked about, one of your favorite movies to direct, was The Phantom Menace, which is why I wore my Phantom Menace T-shirt here with Anakin.
Yeah, there you go.
Down. It's the first movie I ever saw in theaters. You talk about being able to direct Ray Park in Darth Maul and loving that. I want to talk a little bit about that, but also the new Maul Shadow Lord show. I know you've been keeping up with that with your son. I want to get, if you've seen the last 2 episodes, I want to get your take on the last 2 episodes because we were in a watch. Django and I were in a watch party together with some other people, and like the end of episode 9, we were like, "Oh, what the heck is happening right now?"
Jumping out of my chair, my mind was blown. I was having such a good time, man. Yeah, what'd you think of those last 2 episodes there?
Yes, I saw there was a post Sam Whitto was talking about it, and underneath I said Star Wars is back, and
yes,
and I think to me he's actually, this series has united the fans who were very divided before this for reasons we don't want to go into, but. I think, and it's especially to me because I directed some of Ray Park and the fight scenes with Darth Maul. And I knew then, I thought, wow, this is such a cool character. And it was the first double-ended lightsaber.
Yeah.
And part of that was Ray's brilliance. I mean, he wasn't a stunt coordinator. He didn't come up through the ranks. Nick Gilroy chose him because he's a Dan stick fighter. He's very high Dan in martial arts, other ones. And so for the first time, actually, George could do fights that were so fast. And Ewan came up with him. Ewan realized. And so the precision that Ray had meant if they rehearsed, the fights got really pretty cool.
And I heard you guys had to take the Obi-Wan Maul fight and actually, like, in production, slow it down a bit because they were going so quick.
Yes, they were. He was so good. He was so fast. That's true. It got cool. It got too kind of animated. and the thing that with this Maul series, first of all, is story again. It's based on story, which seemed to have got forgotten. Yeah. And it's based on Star Wars story and based on the characters. And it's just exhilarating. And I happen to love Bad Batch. And you mentioned it with my son. This is part of it. George made movies for 12-year-olds. I could sit with my son and watch Bad Batch. And he watched it without going back to his computer.
Right.
He and I have been watching Maul because, again, that's what George intended, that families could do it. And here it is. And it's a lot darker, but times have gone that way now. It's changed. We're not in, it's moved into that kind of direction. So they're able to make it a bit grittier and a bit darker now.
Yeah.
And I think that Dave Filoni and Sam have done such an amazing job and inspiring animators to go further and further. It's just the fights are fantastic on this.
They are.
And who doesn't kind of gasp when Darth Vader walks in again? You know? And he brought it back. That kind of, Darth Vader. Look at it. He's the most iconic villain, I think, in the history of cinema.
Yep.
And he's loved by people. He goes to sick kids and helps them. So that's something that George created that's completely unique.
Yep, 100%.
Most times bad guys are just bad guys, but he created a bad guy who's iconic, but who's actually people love.
Yeah, and that's something too that's really interesting is like we were talking about when we kind of had an idea that Vader might be appearing. I think we all did, right? At the end.
We all figured.
But it was more we were kind of like, how are they going to handle him? And the way that I think they portrayed him and handled him with the utmost reverence, right? One, he didn't speak a word in there. Not a single word was spoken by him. He just shows up as this big menacing, again, like Maul said, you are no inquisitor, right? Like, just this, like the whole time I'm watching, even thinking about it now, I have goosebumps. Like, and he's like fighting half the time. He's fighting just one-handed, all three of them at the same time. I'm like, they are handling him so well and giving him so much respect. I love every second of this.
Yeah, I agree.
His breathing didn't change either. He was like just having it easy the whole time. Like he was no struggle.
that was because it gave the audience who don't know Star Wars, who are watching this, it gave them a reference point to this is powerful, and Maul actually couldn't come up to him at that point. And they very cleverly kept the two going because there was not a conclusion of one would beat the other. This was
right.
This had to be achieved. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the only regret is I can't go on and watch 2 more next Monday.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
However long for season 2. But I did have another Maul question. Since you directed Phantom Menace, I heard this from a friend. I didn't know if this was true or not. I figured since I'm talking to the guy, I'll ask. This friend of mine said that he heard somewhere that Obi-Wan actually used not just Qui-Gon's but Darth Maul's lightsaber as well to cut Maul in half, and that's why that's some of the red comes up because it's not blood, but it's like some of the glow of the saber. I didn't know if that was true necessarily, but what are your thoughts on that? Did Obi-Wan use Maul's saber to kill him originally? That was in like a deleted cut or something he heard about.
It might have been. There was, it's been my pet issue, as you know, from I'm starting to come out with it now about the lightsabers. And when I did the first film, I went into, okay, this is a legendary kind of his father's lightsaber, and I had to find something that suited Luke, and it wasn't his, it was his father's, so it was Darth Vader's. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a desert mystic, so I wanted something that would suit that. I matched them, and then Darth Vader had to be like like the Death Star. It had to be cold and engineered.
Yeah,
I purposely did that. That got forgotten by the next set decorator who did all the next movies and never bothered at all. And just I'm now dealing with it because I'm making lightsabers. I made the father one that we released with Nia is what I think, if I'd have had the time and the money to design something, is what I think Darth Vader deserves, that iconic look. And I'm doing the same again now after Luke lost his arm and his lightsaber fighting Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He had to get a lightsaber back, and he has to fight Darth Vader, and the set decorator just gave him Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. That's not right to me. Luke would have forged his own. That's my next one I'm doing with Nia. That'll come out once we got the design settled now. Ooh. So on Phantom Menace, I think, those are things. And I remember watching the prop guys, whoever did it, made about 8 sabers and presented them to you and I said, choose one. See, I would have never have done that with George. I would always have given and created a lightsaber that suited the action, that suited the character, everything. So I think probably what you're saying was actually kind of laziness on the floor, that, oh, this will do, we're giving this one or giving that one. And I think probably that could well have happened.
Possibly. Yeah, not too sure, but
yeah, I remember.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I remember watching again your the Maker podcast, which again I've been really enjoying that, by the way, Roger. Like,
thank you.
Fun to watch. And I remember watching you had like the pictures of Darth Maul kind of sprawled out with his lightsaber, and you're kind of making tweaks like I would have done X, Y, Z. I would have done this.
Then they say, why can't we do that one now? So,
yeah. So I can't wait to see what you guys come up with at Theory Savers for this.
Oh my goodness,
this is going to be amazing.
It's going to be really cool. And you,
I love, I chose him because he's the best. The sabers are the best. He is passionate about George's vision and characters and everything to do with it. And so I thought, and they're beautifully made. The father is just stunning. I've got one. It's a work of art that I hold it in my hand. It's so well done. And the sound, the sound, because, ours never worked on the first film. Now,
they light up now. They
light up. They work, and you can fight with them.
Right?
Actually,
that is funny that you talk about that. I remember listening to an interview with Hayden because he was on the Ahsoka show, and they were fighting together. And now they have these lightsabers like we do, where they can fight with them. And he goes, even though I'm like still proficient in fighting with it, he goes, him and Ewan were like, it's completely different now, because before it was like these metal poles, right? And they were just spinning them around and going at each other. And like every take, they'd have a different lightsaber that have to come out because the poles were like bent and all this stuff.
Yeah,
and he goes, it's a different feel now with these new lightsabers.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, now they work. I mean, we could only dream about that.
I've heard that that's been a little bit of a struggle, though, because with the originals, with the poles, those would just hit each other so well and kind of just like lock into each other. That's why they would bend. But now with the
originals were wood. The first ones were wood.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That's all we could do it out of, the first ones, because I had to do that.
Oh, that's right.
That was another idea I came up with, and we painted it with front projection paint.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if you look at the rehearsals, they were continually breaking. We had to put new ones in. Eventually, the special effects found a way to put metal ones in. But to start with, they were wood. We just had wood rod that was what we could easily find that was cheap.
Yeah, but I prefer the wood or the metal that they used for the prequels, because now even though they can get the cool light effects with the new ones, I've heard that they're so much more bouncy, and it's hard to get the same effect fighting words that way. But I mean, it at least provides the realistic glow, so that's nice,
right?
Which is cool though, because like Nick Gillard, is again doing the same thing you're doing with Theory, and he's got the prop lightsaber out, and I love that, like that people can actually use that.
Oh yeah,
like, I think that's so cool.
His stunt saber,
which I love. And he's another person, in my opinion, that like doesn't get enough credit for what he did. I mean, we would not have the amazing fights that we've had without him. I mean, that the fights that we have are incredible, especially like you go movie to movie and then you get to Revenge of the Sith and you have Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and that fight is just absolutely insane.
No, it's legendary, and he wasn't just two guys fighting. He gave different techniques, because they're at a different, like, based on what George had always written about. Obi-Wan's is from deep training, where he's gone to the end of the training as a Jedi Master, and Anakin's is fueled by anger. Yeah. So you watch the two, and that's what's fueling the fight, and that's why Anakin would lose, because anger in the end doesn't. It gets in the way, and so I think Nick again. We all kind of got cut out of it, and. It owes a lot to Nick of what he did, and I'm so glad that Nia is doing it. Theory Sabers is at least bringing these people to light.
Yeah,
and behind the scenes, I'm doing what I can to show now, because when John Rinsler wrote the first Making of Star Wars books, that he didn't even know I existed, and David West Reynolds, who was the first. He wrote the Making of Dictionaries, of those ones. He said he went through the archives. He was dissecting my lightsaber, the guns, doing everything on Tatooine, and he kept asking who actually made these, who created these. No one could tell him. There was no reference, because everything was thrown out on the first film. And the interview that Charlie Lippincott did with me, which would have revealed all of this, got lost. That was missing, never been seen again. Wow. So I thought, that there is this film, Star Wars, isn't going away. It's going to be in universities, studied for generations. So I thought I'd better kind of help to put into perspective where this all came from and how it all came about.
That's great. And I'm glad you had, because like, not only your book is amazing, your documentary is great. I love it. But it's also been awesome to be able to get to know you and talk to you and hear your stories in person.
Yeah, well, I love this world, and I support George, and I think, we need it on a planet. We need it. Children need it. The stories and the, the mentorship and everything. And I love this world, so I'm happy to do it. I've just now signed a deal. I'm going to do a children's lightsaber book just on and encouraging children to go and make their own, get a torch and a bit of a cellophane. So
yes.
we're doing that one right now.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's fun for me. I mean, I'm doing what I used to do. So, it's a lot easier than trying to finance movies and go out and shoot in terrible conditions. It's a lot more fun for me, actually.
I love it.
I was actually curious because you were talking about stories and George and everything there. I was curious. Is there anything you can tell us about your time with George, and like any stories that you might have that you haven't told that a fan such as myself would love to hear about?
No, I mean, I just, when we met, we connected. We were like students. I mean, pretty young, and I think it's not something that George could impart by talking. And what I think George's genius is he hired people in the positions who could make the films he made, who were still young enough that they'd done the job, they knew how to do it, but weren't like so jaded that they say, no, Dove, you can't do that. But he also hired people who he'd written. Every script that George wrote could not be done. There was no way to do it. And he trusted his instinct of who he hired would figure out a way how to do it, which even is true on Marl. The animation's progressing massively now.
Yeah.
They don't sit on the and that's a legacy of George. They're not sitting back on, oh, this works, we'll just do it like that. And I think the innovation that George put in, one story I'll tell you that. So in the shooting, when we finally got to Jerba, it was the end of the shooting in Tunisia, and I had to show George a set that we'd done. So I waited till they were breaking on Mos Eisley and said, we'll go now and look at lunchtime. And I'm driving away. I had a car, and George looked as exhausted and tired and ill as I felt. So I said, have you eaten? And he said, no. And I said, right. And I knew a cafe where they did a thing called chorba, which is hot, boiled like a soup, but with chicken and coriander and spices, that I knew was safe. So I took him there. We had one of those, and I said, this is all your fault. And he said, I know. He said, my day is exactly, he described it. He said, I get up in the morning and they fill a rucksack with rocks until I'm on the floor. I can't move. It's so heavy. And using all my strength, I'll take the rocks out one by one. And by the end of the day, I stand up, and then I have to start again.
Wow.
That's how he felt his day was. And he also said to me then, he said, I also realized I created a nightmare in R2-D2, which is the combination of a child and a dog for a director to film.
Yeah.
Which was not easy.
No, not at all. One of the things I wanted to ask you as time kind of comes up here, obviously next year is the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. And today, me and a bunch of my buddies are going to be online waiting for the tickets to go on sale for Celebration. We plan on being there. Do you have any plans on being out there in LA for the Celebration?
For the first time in history, finally, Chris, the head of Lucasfilm, has said they're inviting me to go and to do panels.
Yes.
Which is everyone said, you've got to be there, Roger. And I said, I know, but I've never been invited. We're behind the scenes. We're not kind of there. But I think it's suddenly been realized that maybe they should have the creator of the lightsaber there. So I will be there. and doing
Yes.
panels. So I'm just praying that I could meet Dave Filoni and Doug Chang and do something with the two of them, because I think that would be awesome, because we owe Dave a lot in bringing back what we did on the first one. And Doug Chang is just, took over from Ralph McQuarrie and has done an amazing job.
100%.
And I knew him right from the beginning when he started. They flew me to the ranch and I spent 2 hours with him. They filmed it, going through everything I did for his guys who were starting the team that were doing the illustrations to design everything. So I spent several hours with them.
That's so cool. I love that.
We have a long history.
Yeah, it'll be good to see you out there, Roger. Finally getting I know you're doing this because obviously you said you love Star Wars and you love just telling the stories, but like, to me, you're finally getting the recognition you deserve, because without guys like you, again, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with Star Wars everything behind us,
No, it's true. And I went away and I went off and did other things and kept going and everything. And then it all came about. And David West Reynolds kind of forced me to write the book and said, if you don't do it, it's lost, it's gone. And then George writing that forward as well, where he endorsed me in effect of what I did for him on the movie, has changed things no end. So yeah, and everyone says that, and I think I've never properly been recognized in America, funny enough. That's where, because the book, they didn't bother to ever publicize it, and every convention I go to, they're saying, we didn't know this book was out. So maybe that'll change things, which will be good, I think, because there's lots more to come.
Good. I'm excited to see what comes.
Yeah.
I am so excited for that. I had another question here. As we look forward to, obviously, like Dave Filoni, one of the things that I love about him, you talked about when you were doing Star Wars, the original, you guys were pushing the script, right? You're always pushing the boundaries of what was known at the time. And you alluded to it, but like, I feel like Dave Filoni and his team are doing that now, like you said, with the animation. They are really pushing those boundaries of what we know. Like, I loved the art of it. It's almost like at times like a smeared paint canvas.
Yeah,
you get some, and I'm like, this is so fantastic. I love every second of this.
Yes.
And so,
I agree.
As someone like yourself who really pushed those boundaries, I could see how the respect for Dave Filoni, right? Like pushing those boundaries and being willing to do that.
Mine really, really was cemented in a huge way at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series, because he had to dig up the lightsabers ready to be able to give Luke his. I was on the edge of my seat. Because the second set decorator ruined mine. He put rivets in the T-strip, which made it human. I never would. This cannot be human made. It's a mystical weapon. I'm on the edge of my seat because that rivet one went right through Star Wars, not the original, the one that should have been Luke's. And he dug up mine. He dug up the original with no rivets. And I would, whoa, Dave Filoni, so he's the real deal.
That's awesome.
It is nice.
Yeah.
Django, anything as we kind of close up here? Is there anything, last questions or anything you have for Mr. Roger Christian here?
Well, I guess really the only other thing that I have been curious about is, say acting wise, have you ever done any kind of acting? And if not, do you have any kind of interest to do anything in acting?
I was born in Reading, which was the head of capital city of Berkshire. And it didn't have a theatre. Everybody else had theatres. We didn't. We had a jail where they put Oscar Wilde. We had a biscuit factory that was famous. And a seed factory, and that was what made Reading famous. So we didn't have a theatre. There was a private theatre, Prospect Theatre, and I joined immediately. And I acted in about the first 2 or 3 plays. and realized it wasn't for me. I preferred telling others what to do than trying to do it myself. And I quickly went on to the propping side and helping do the sets and doing other things like that. So I did get cast. There's a film called Made that John Mackenzie made. I was art directing, and it was about a pop singer played by Roy Harper. And he was being interviewed by, it was the start of all music videos. Old Grey Whistle Test was the very first one that ever started all of this stuff out. And then John came to me and said, I need a film director. You've got to play a film director for me. And I said, you look right. And it will suit the character. And I said, are you sure? I've got to do some other things. He said, no, you're doing it. So I had to play a film director in that. And it's gruesome for me.
That's funny. It's like
I don't mind
nails on a
talking.
chalkboard.
Yeah,
That is so funny.
I don't mind talking in public and doing stuff, and I'm very relaxed about it because I know my subject so well, and I know, millions of stories and how everything was done. I enjoy that side of it, but actually, no, doing what actors do, and having I've worked with some legends, and when you see actors on fire doing what they do, it's something that is, it's a joy. And you early on learn you don't direct actors, you cast them correctly and watch them work.
Yeah.
And so, it's a joy for me just to sit there and see characters coming to life that were words on a page. It's an incredible art to see when you see the greats and how good they are. And watching, like I was there with Alec Guinness working. I mean, Alec Guinness could recite the phone book, and you'd be listening absolutely with it and quietly, and does it. There's it's an internal mechanism that they somehow have that they can plug into and create a character that we believe in.
Yeah, that's amazing. One of the final questions I wanted to ask you is, you stay in contact with George, right?
Yes, I'm one of the few, I think, who can go there. So
yeah, I saw him and his wife posted a May the 4th video. It's kind of funny. I loved it. But how is, for everyone watching who obviously loves Star Wars, like, how is George doing?
He's happy. He's very happy with Meredith, happily married. And George is, when I last saw him a few years back, in fact, we had lunch. My wife was pregnant. He had his daughter, who was only a few weeks old. Our entire lunch was talking about children, feeds, nappies. He was amazed that you didn't have to stick your finger in anymore to see if they peed, that they had a line and the line would change color, so you knew, and things like that. But when I walked back with George, I was alone with him, and we were walking back into Skywalker, and he said, I stopped directing for a long time. And I said, yeah, I know, George. I know how painful it was, the first one, for him to do it. And he said, the truth is, I had to bring my children up alone, and they're more important to me than Star Wars. And his family is more important than anything. He brought them up on his own, the three children, as mother and father. And I think in the end, that's what, George's ideal day would be, to get up, have breakfast, drop his kids off at school, do some work, and at 3 o'clock stop and go and pick them up, and then go and have supper and watch a movie or something. That's his life. And he happened to have created something that's become like nothing else in the history of cinema or music or nothing's been this big. Nothing's connected to a world. And so, he's a very and I think that little clip of the two of them showed how happy he was, and that's George underneath it all.
I love it. I love it.
You know, he can't go. You know, that's partly why I'm doing the Patreon and YouTube now and all of this, because George can't do it.
He'd be mugged.
Yeah, well, he'd be mobbed.
No,
I mean, it would be worse. He'd have his clothes ripped off him. I mean, they would just, no one would let him alone, and he can't go out anywhere without an onslaught of questions and everything. So I kind of thought, okay, then it's my job to try and fill the gaps in now.
And I love what he's doing. Like you're going out and telling the stories and stuff. And I love that he's able to like make this narrative museum, right? And he's got all these different art pieces and stuff and film pieces and stuff in there. And it's like, it's his way of being able to speak to the public without being out in public.
Yeah. Yes, and it's also he knows how valuable art is. You know, we all studied and looked and went to museums and art galleries. That's kind of got a bit lost, and his ambition is to bring art back to America. So he's got a bit of Star Wars in there to get people in, but a lot of it is art and imagination, all those things. You know, nobody knows. In the early days, he and Al Gore put computers in every school in America who couldn't afford one. No one, no trumpeting, no look what I'm doing and anything. They just did it because he cares, you know, and about what it is really to be a kind of healthy human being, if you like. And that's where the Joseph Campbell and the mythology and everything, and that's what Luke Skywalker is, a fantastic figure, and that's what George is all about. That's what matters to him. Yeah. So the museum is a way of giving back and trying to inspire people really through art, because art in the end is the route to the soul, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And like, I mean, your story there with George, like that, I think that sums up Star Wars the best, right? It's about family, right?
Yeah.
Being able to enjoy it with family, being able to watch it with family, having those people that you call your family, whether they're blood or not.
Yes.
And so I think that's the biggest lesson I think we can take right here from George himself, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And that's 100% what it's about. That's why he made Star Wars, for families to be able to go to the cinema. No one was making them at the time.
Yeah.
They told me, Gary Kurtz said that when George was making American Graffiti, he said to Gary, let's go to the cinema and see something. And he realized then there was nothing to see. No one was making it. So he said then, I'm going to make a film for families to enjoy.
Yeah, 100%. And now it's coming down. We got the Mandalorian Grogu movie coming out on May 22nd. Yep. And all my kids, this is going to be their first Star Wars movie theater experience where they've never seen the movie before. So this is there for me. That was my Phantom Menace. For them, that's their Phantom Menace, and I'm excited.
Yeah, this is the first actual Star Wars theatrical release in over 7 years, right?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's wow. Yeah, this is a big one.
So this will be the first for my kids.